Hey, well, good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday night. It is another R3, and we're I'm going to say it again. It's my go-to word. We're excited to be coming to you, and really excited because this week they have announced that we're able to go back on Sunday with a 15% capacity. So if you've not heard the news, that is the exciting news that we are going back on Sunday. 15% capacity. That means 75 people in the sanctuary, 50 people upstairs. Gives us room for a good portion of our church to come together. I know some will choose to still stay at home, and we understand that and bless that. And some will choose to come. Of course, we're going to be wearing masks. It's something that we still need to do. But again, we get to meet. It's going to be great to see people in the sanctuary. I remember it was just a week and a half ago that I said that I felt like the grace was lifting, and I didn't know at the time. I thought the grace is lifting, but I think we got a few more weeks. And so when I found out this week that we were able to go back, just incredible and very blessed. So we will be doing that. I'm not sure Wednesdays what we're going to do. We haven't discussed that yet. So we do have another R3 tonight and a prayer essentials next week, and then we'll let you know what's happening. So tonight I have a special guest coming on, and special in the sense that she's an amazing woman of God. We know her. She goes to our church, Erica Pollett. And you may not know a ton about her, so this will be a great opportunity for you to get to know her a little more. She's got a wealth of knowledge in the addictions field and many other areas, and we're going to talk about probably a whole slew of things. And so I'm going to bring Erica on, and we'll have a chance to talk with her. But let's get her on. Hello,
Hi.
Erica.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm well.
That's good. I'm waiting for the husband to make a comment here. See how quickly he jumps on. So,
Yeah.
how are you doing tonight? You doing well?
Yep. Staying cool.
That's which was different than 2 weeks ago when I originally asked you because you had no air conditioner and that was really hot back then too.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to do it while I have sweat running down my
No,
face.
no, that's not when you want to be introduced. So,
Yeah.
so Erica, even with us now, I'm trying to think. What is it going to be like? 2 years in August? 3 years in August? You and Dorman?
Well, I'm going to say three at least.
Three at least.
Hmm.
So, um, you know, if you get to know you, you're not quiet, but I think sometimes you can be quiet. Oh yeah, here we go. Dorman, hottest guest yet. Yeah, that's something that Dorman would say, and we'll
Yes,
let you
for
say
sure.
that, Dorman. Um, so many people may not know a lot about you because you kind of come and you're like a powerful secret weapon. And so this is an opportunity for you to also let people know a little bit more about you. So you're in the addictions field.
Hmm.
How long have you been in the addictions field?
Um, I mean, as a counselor, I since 2014, I did a lot of volunteering before that. So I was working alongside with Pastor Leslie Kaza and just really helping out with family programs and stuff like that. Um, so probably like in my own walk of recovery from codependency, that was in 2005, and then started volunteering in 2007.
Okay. Now, when you
Mhm.
say Leslie, she wasn't part of the Salvation Army, was she? When
Yes.
you were, oh, she was back then too. Okay.
Like
So
when I
you,
first met her, she was still in school to be a counselor, but she was also volunteering there and starting a
oh,
family day
wow.
program. And she also started some programs out in Harrow, and that's when I was going with my children.
Okay. I did not know
Yeah.
that. Wow. That's awesome. So maybe go back a bit in history. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do we need to know about Erica?
Hmm. Well, ask questions if you need to stop me there. But well, again, um, s- I grew up in a Christian home, and my mom was really amazing at teaching me about faith. You know, faith to believe in miracles. And as I was saying to you earlier, that I had a lot of faith that God could heal me. I had a lot of healing in my body throughout my childhood, and I just loved that part about God that He could be healer, and nothing could stop Him from that. And so, um, I throughout, I got married at my first marriage. I was married at 17. And
Wow. Okay.
yeah, I was fairly young. I had my first child at 17 as well. And I had four children in that first marriage. And, and then that is when a lot of stuff, I started to lose my identity. in ways that that was because of codependency. So how that looked for me was, I believe that, God was about, you're here to serve, you're here to love people. But I lost myself in that. And I thought that loving people meant that you sacrificed yourself all the time. And
Mm,
so I really had my beliefs messed up, and that, God also loved me and wanted me to have a life of freedom. And I just had a lot of priorities messed up in that. So what happened was, that first marriage fell apart with, because of addiction, and I was very, very codependent. I probably was a poster person for codependency, like enabler, people pleaser, that type of thing, rescuer. And a lot of times when you have that background, you tend to want to go into that field of helping
mm,
people. So it's
right.
a good thing, but you still have to know who you are and have that balance. So yeah.
That's been a real journey for you. And,
Hmm.
I'm going to try to remember to get back into this topic a little later because that whole thought opens up, the expression, a whole can of worms. I think it's interesting since being a pastor now, I don't even know how many years I've been doing this. You can see that. You can see where people get lost in ministry and
Hmm.
can give so much of themselves, they actually lose themselves or they actually lose, family life and quality.
Hmm.
And I think, we're going to talk about that with you and what that was like, not ministry wise, but codependency. But it's interesting. We live in a day and age where it's almost like the pendulum has swung the other way, and people want to,
Hmm.
um, they want to protect things so much that they forget to volunteer. And so I think it's that tightrope walk, always trying to find where we're serving God, serving our family, serving, volunteering. And it is, you can actually get lost in who you are in so many different ways.
Hmm.
You could forget ministry needs and you can forget family needs. And
Yeah.
so it's been a journey for you. So you were 17.
Hmm. I went through a rebellious period of my life where it was like, my mom, I remember every time I wanted to, I would say, Mom, I'm bored. She'd say, read the Bible. And that was just not for, like, I grew up reading the Bible and I knew, like, I loved the stories and stuff. But the
It's not what you
more
want to
I
hear at
just did not
15.
feel like, yeah, I was bored. I was like, and growing up in a small town, it was easy to get into trouble if you wanted to. And I kind of had my choices, and I chose some, things that were not healthy for me. That was, I don't believe, a part of God's plan for me, but yet He has turned it around into a blessing. I have, again, 4 kids with, that I, in that particular thing that was there. And I would never change that. But, being that what I went through, it's taught me to have compassion for people in addictions and families that are broken. And I really love that part. But a lot of the trauma, like, that I went through or that the children went through, it really messed up my perception of God. And so, like, I like to look at it like my pain messed up my perception of how I viewed God. Because I was stuck in that pain so deep, I couldn't see out of it. I was always looking to God to just pluck me out and save me, or God, you don't care. Like, it was one or the other. It was extreme. And so with that, I just found that that was really difficult for, for me to really see that God wanted to help me in through that. But I did end up getting saved at not 19, and so that walk was a beautiful journey of getting to know God, and just getting closer at my heart with Him. And He really took me into the word that I was trying to avoid. That my mom always said, don't, read the word. It was like all I could do was devour the word. It was like I was hungry for it. And that was something that I knew God had to put that there Himself, because it pushed me away for the longest
Hmm.
time. And so,
Let,
yeah,
let,
so.
let's stop for a second. I want to touch on a few things you just said because I think it's so amazing that our mindset determines so much. And sometimes we think that we have an accurate mindset only later on to find out that we are completely inaccurate. So
Mhm.
you just said that your view or your perception of God was totally wrong. So can you maybe describe that, unpack that a little bit? So you
Mhm.
did say that you knew that he was a God that healed. but in
Hmm.
what ways was it really distorted?
I believe that always that God was upset with me. I really
Okay.
thought that I could not please him. Like if I did something that was not holy and pure, and I just looked at it like, wow, I'm a failure. And what kind of person am I, like, that would do that when I know better? It's the whole know better thing, like, better, better. And so
If you weren't reading
I
the Bible all the time, you were probably failing.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, just that my belief was like, God, I can't please you. So a lot of times I would just say, okay, I give up, and I'm not going to bother to try. Um, yeah, I didn't really realize how much he did love me. Um, Meeting Dorman, I was sharing with him earlier when I was talking to him. I said, I was talking to you about it, and I said meeting Dorman was just such a big, um, I don't know, it was like an eye opener for me about God, how much he loved me and how much he wasn't really upset with me and his family, the way that they really showed that it's so freeing that God loves you freely. And some of the things I would say to him, like, oh, I'm going to go to hell if I think like that or something like that, and he'd be like, well, what are you talking about? And it was just like I was just tormented a lot. Even though I was a Christian for so many years, I was being tormented by the lies that I viewed God because of, I was still stuck in some of those painful moments, right? And yeah,
So did a lot of that come out of your upbringing or your marriage or both?
I think it was both, definitely. When, like, again, I know, like, my mom is, like, again, a faith believer, and but there's this, we got to do good for other people. And so if I didn't, if I wanted to put a boundary up, it was hard for her to understand that boundary. And so it would be like, well, God doesn't like that, right? And again, I'm not saying anything bad about my mom. It was just a belief system she had that we really don't have the boundaries to set with people. And so I think that was one part growing up. So I was always like, okay, I would just lay down what I wanted, or I would lay down my beliefs of what I thought was right or whatever, because I just wanted to serve people. I just wanted to be there for people, but I wouldn't think about what I was sacrificing, and then I would be resentful of it. And
Hmm.
so that's a big part of codependency, is you get very resentful for people, um when you know that there's something that you want to do or don't want to do, but you can't even speak it. So you hold it in, and then you resent the others for even asking or whatever, for doing it. Um, and also, again, in the marriage itself, it was like, was my faith strong enough to believe that I could make this marriage work? And would I be disappointing God if I walked away from the marriage? That was a huge one. And I literally prayed. I said, God, I will not walk away unless I have that um, okay with you, because I just didn't want to step out of his will and that. And what he showed me was so freeing, because he shared with me, like, through, I was watching TV, and there was a speaker on TV, and he was talking about this woman who had an unfaithful husband, and she was battling to stay with him or to leave him. And again, I'm not telling anybody to leave their spouses or whatever, but you need to know what God is showing you. And one church was telling her to stay, and she stayed in that marriage, and she got a disease and it killed her because of that unfaithful partner, right? And so when that happened, the speaker said, how was that Jesus having giving her life and giving it more abundantly? Sometimes we have to make hard choices, and it's going to feel like it's the wrong choice, but it will be a choice that frees you. And I had to look at some choices, but my mind still was like, am I a bad person for making these choices? But that statement right there is what set me free to make some hard choices.
And that, it was a very unhealthy marriage,
Hmm.
correct? So, we're not talking about, and
Right.
I'm sure people understand that. We're not talking about somebody that just says, "Hey, I'm not in love anymore."
That's right.
It was unhealthy for you, unhealthy for your kids, and so. But
Hmm.
I can understand where a lot of people, because divorce has been such a difficult topic to unpack with people, and so sometimes we do feel like we just got to put up and be abused, and that's not what God wants for sure.
Hmm.
Can you? we didn't talk a whole lot about this in our pre-talk today, but can you unpack codependency a little bit? I think that's something that you hear the
Hmm.
word, you just said it again, and I think I have a handle on it, and yet at the same time, I wonder if there's probably more to it. And I know that's a big thing in your heart
Hmm.
to help people get free
There's
from it.
there's so many definitions to codependency. It's like it's constantly changing, and really, like how I can really describe it is, you kind of lose your feelings. Like you feel what the other person feel. You don't know your own regulate your own feelings. Like you can't really understand what your feelings are in that way. So if the person is happy, you're happy. If the person is upset, you're upset. I'm just putting it as like little pointers, but
Right.
you feel validated. You want to feel validated by them. And so again, you're not looking for things that you know are true to you. You're looking for that validation from that person. And um some of it again is like poor boundaries, again, the people pleasing. I just You lose yourself, you become like a chameleon. There's like, again, the martyrism, like you will feel sorry for yourself. And one of the big things that I realized with codependency was I want to control, and I didn't realize codependents are very controlling. And
Mm.
I did not know that. I was thinking like, no, that person's controlling. That's why I have to be so responsible. And it's over responsibility. And I would take on that, but I would take on it more than needed. I would take on the other person's responsibilities as well. And so you can just become enmeshed and not knowing your independence of who you are, and you just start to like form into like understanding that you have to save people, or you have to be doing things for people. You're always busy doing, and then again, you resent it. You resent what you do because you look at it like, why isn't that person reciprocating back to me? And so, we use a word in our addiction field, which is like, what is your payoff? Like, why was I doing it? Because I wanted control. I wanted to save something, preserve something, not go through the pain of something, avoid
Mm.
looking at it. And so you will sacrifice a lot of things, but most of all, your identity.
That's fascinating.
Hmm.
So, how does someone identify? How do you find that line when you're trying to do something out of because God's either leading you to or the goodness of your heart? And where's that line where you go, oh, I think I've crossed over and now I'm a little codependent because I like is there anything that you use to go, how do I navigate this?
Well, for rescuing itself, like if I'm doing something, kind of like I can't remember all the points, but I will ask myself, am I doing something for somebody else that they haven't asked me to do? um
Okay.
like, and not in a nice way, like I'm doing something nice and blessing somebody, but literally taking over responsibilities that they haven't asked me to do. Because again, what is my payoff in it? Like, is it that I'm afraid that they're not going to do it right, or they're going to make a mess of their life, like with my children, right? Like I love being a mom, but boy, was it hard letting them go and watching them make mistakes. And
Sure.
mistakes is part of their process of learning, but I just want to go in there and like do it for them because I can see bigger pictures and stuff, and I've been there, right? So, but that can be very codependent. Being that I'm going to do something for them that they haven't asked me to, or I'm going to do something for them that they could be doing for themselves. And, am I stealing someone's self worth that they will learn from that experience for themselves in that area? So,
Mm.
again, if I start feeling like I am feeling pressure, if I, from my own life, if I start feeling pressure for something and I'm resenting it, then I want to ask God, why am I resenting this? Am I resenting it because of my own flesh? Like my flesh is in the way. I'm just being stubborn, And so I take it to God. Like, am I being stubborn? Am I being rebellious? Or is there something in me that knows that I needed to say no, and I am scared to say no? I am scared to lose something here. And
Mm.
so I can gauge my feelings. Like I'm trying, I'm not, I'm always working at it, but I like to gauge my feelings and say, okay, what is the right, what am I really feeling? And I think that's a big part of about recovery in general is what is my feelings? Like, what am I feeling right now? And if I'm feeling scared, if I'm feeling pressured or anything like that, I'm going to base decisions off of that. I'm not going to make healthy decisions If my feelings are all over the place, I need time to, figure out, what am I feeling? What is my purpose of doing this? Is it because God's asked me to, or is it because I think God expects me to do it?
Wow, those are really good points. So you've got resentment. Is God
Hmm.
expecting me? Do I have a misperception of what God's asking me to? Do
Hmm.
I feel like I have to earn, you said, like earn
Hmm.
people's love and trust? So those are three keys right there just to look at. That's, phenomenal. So obviously codependency and addiction usually go hand in hand.
That's right.
Okay.
Usually, well, we have a thing called codependency and counterdependency, and we lock in, usually one person, like in relationships, they lock into each other. And or you can say narcissism, and codependency, like one is overpowering and one is like always giving up things to make that happen, right? And so your personality traits end up locking in, because again, there's payoffs for both.
Hmm.
So usually with codependents, they have a lot of insecurity and stuff like that, and then so they want to be with somebody who is overconfident, who can take charge. And it doesn't matter if it's an unhealthy way, they just don't want to be the one to make the decision to take charge.
And
Even though they can be controlling, it's still different. It's not the same. You
right.
don't want to make you don't want to make those hard decisions. You just want to be there to avoid looking at yourself and the pain that you're going through and the decisions that you may have to make in life.
Interesting. So yeah, it's almost like you can get pulled up by them
Hmm.
and probably also resent it at the same time, right?
Oh, for sure.
Now we talked about something earlier, and you and I are similar in the sense that we're feelers.
Hmm.
So how does that play in with codependency, addiction, and all that? Because I do see in life that some people, will say things like they wear their heart on their sleeve. That we have all these
Hmm.
expressions. It really just means that we're feelers more than the average person. And some people, I'm like, do you not feel a thing? Like you could,
Yeah.
you know, you could do anything you want, it seems, and not even realize that you're hurting people. So how does that play in with codependency and addiction when you're
Well,
a feeler?
yeah, definitely, again, your emotions are kind of leading you. They're pulling you out in every direction. So one minute you're high, the next minute you're low. It almost feels like a bipolar, because you're fluctuating with the other person, with the situations.
Mm,
So again, where are you in your own feelings? So um a lot of times, like I was saying earlier too, that I used to be a big believer of follow your heart, which we know is not biblical. Biblical is, lead your heart. And obviously, who's leading your heart? God. When you trust him with your heart, he leads your heart. And he won't lead you in a place where you will resent it. You won't lead you in a place where, it will harm you. But your emotions definitely will, because they're so fickle, they change. So we really teach on, like, your feelings are not facts, they're yours, they're true to you at the moment. They are your feelings, but they aren't the facts of the situation. And a lot of times, like, especially if you've been through trauma, you're you're making decisions based on the trauma. Like, I was sharing with you earlier, like, if in trauma you had the fight, flight, or freeze response, I would just be a runner, just like, okay, get me out of here. Just so my feelings were telling me, my thoughts were telling me to run. My feelings was escape, like shut down or freeze. Even still to this, like, or when me and Dorman were engaged and my son got burned really bad, and we had to bring him to the hospital. And we were barbecuing. I was out barbecuing hamburgers, and he had Levi in the shower pouring cold water on him because he had been scalded by hot water by accident. And so he was literally peeling. His skin was peeling, and I heard him scream. I ran in there, and I seen this happen, and went back outside to barbecue. I just shut down, and I
mm,
wanted to get away from that, and I went out there and I barbecued it. Torment was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "The kids have to eat." And he's like, "We got to get to the hospital." And I didn't, to my mind, I was like, "This isn't happening. This isn't real."
mm,
And I was my way to escape. You know what I mean? And so often when you're faced with some hard things in your life, and you feel such agony in your emotions, the one thing you want to do is escape. You don't want to feel, you want to numb it, and a shock comes in and all that sort of thing. But if you can't escape, say imagine all this trauma starts to happen in your life and you can't escape, you want to numb it. So so often people numb it by other addictions, and people can be addictions in itself. So,
Hmm.
I could lose myself in a relationship if I don't want to feel something about myself. If I don't want to look at myself, I will look at the other person I'm going to rescue, I'm going to save. My feelings are going to be about how I feel good about me if I help you.
Wow.
I feel so great about me. Yeah, pat me on the back. Look at, I saved you. You know
Right.
what I mean? So I feel pretty good about me, and I don't have to look at all the feelings that are inside of me that are not good. And, in other ways, even same with substances, you just numb out, and that's your way of avoiding dealing with pain.
Wow. That opens up a lot. That's phenomenal.
Hmm.
How do you teach people to learn to step back, to go, okay, so right now you have a lot of feelings, but you know, you can't see it, but those aren't facts. So how do you teach people to learn to step back and process that better?
Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. Again, it's just like learning how to do the difference between assertive, being passive aggressive, aggressive, understanding all of that, right? And then being able to just say, okay, what are you feeling? Literally, what we do, and I mean, at both places that I work, is we hand out feeling charts, like sheets. Some people don't know what they feel. So first of all, is educating them about what are feelings, like what are
Yeah.
feeling words, and then saying, okay, where are you right now in this? And where's your thoughts, like CBT, where's your thoughts, where's your feelings, what's going on in your mind? Write it out, and chart it out all through the day. Like, if you have to like write from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night when you go to bed or whatever, write out your feelings and just jot down, like, 1 o'clock I felt this, and maybe what was I thinking at the time? Understanding how thoughts and all of that can affect your feelings,
Hmm.
and your feelings can affect your thoughts, which ultimately changes your behavior.
Right. So this is probably a big question with that. Do you think people are just naturally feelers and some people are not? Is that a character trait, or is that you're raised that way to sense that? What do you think? It's
Um,
probably a
I don't know. I mean, I think like everybody, prophetically wise, I mean, we've got feelers, hearers, seers, and I think some of them are gifts, but I think also it's just the way God made us, but then it just comes out of balance. I
right.
think that if you are brought up in a home, like, I know, if you're brought up in a home that has stability, you're gonna know, like, okay, how's your day today? Oh, it was not so good. It was, and you're able to process. And so you might be a feeler, but it's not going to be out of balance as much if you're able to process it with someone who's safe and understands it and lets you get it out. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So a lot of times when you suppress all of those, then some people will just shut down and be isolated, and they won't know how to share. So then they're looked at as they're not feelers. But were they feelers? But they shut
Right.
it down because of they didn't feel safe. So
Right.
it's hard to really understand who's more feelers and who's like, I just look at it like, I look at who we're created to be like. We're created to be like Jesus. So he's a feeler. You know what I mean? Like and so I think we're all created in his image to be these things. That, you can have so much compassion for people. But you know what I mean? Like, you also know, like, I'm sure it was like, Jesus went around and said he was moved with compassion. He healed many.
Mm.
You know what I mean? But there's some, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He knew how to regulate it.
Well, yeah, and like you're talking, it's really, I'm sure we all have levels of it, but it's when it goes out of whack.
That's right.
I remember somebody I know, they couldn't feel like I
Hmm.
remember the first time we ever did the wheel with them, and it was interesting because you work from the inside out, and it's so simple on the inside. I'm angry, and as you start to work out, I remember the first time it was fascinating to find out, and that person was like, I didn't even know I felt that way, but as I went through the motion wheel, they
Hmm.
discovered what they felt. But they grew up in a house where nobody really talked about things.
Yeah,
They never really shared. They didn't talk feelings. It was kind of facts. So they didn't know how to process. So really anybody can learn to be a better
hmm,
feeler, and anybody can learn to maybe bring their feelings back a little bit.
that's right. So
Okay.
many times I have like people tell me I don't know what to say when it's my turn to say what do I feel today, like what, or like if they're in program or something, like when we ask them like, you know, how do you feel today, and it's like some people would just make it up because they really couldn't figure it out because they
Mm,
felt so numb, or scared to say how they feel. And so, really, again, is learning that if there are feelings inside that are stuffed in there, is learning to feel safe with your feelings, with somebody, with one person at least, and be
right.
able to share and learn that, okay, you are not wrong for what you feel. And that is honestly like, and I'm not like, saying like I'm putting anybody in like my life that means, um, like I know what I know, but there are times even with myself, if I don't have the right perspective about my feelings, I would be really hard on myself and I would beat myself up for feeling a certain way because again, I should know better or something. And there would be times I would share it with Dorman, and I would say, I feel like this and I know I shouldn't feel like that. And then, we were, and he would be like, like those are your feelings. Who said you shouldn't? Again, it's what you do with them.
Right.
And so, there's like, and I teach it, but sometimes you know what I mean? You get the whole guilt and shame for feeling certain feelings.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to say, okay, God, I feel these intense feelings. Some of them, you're not even, they're just repetitive. They're just things that naturally come up because of trigger responses or, in your life. And so to be able to just let it sit there for a bit, and again just pray it through and say, okay, like, talk about it with somebody. And when you start doing the shouldn't, could, like all of that, like condemning yourself,
Right.
that's when it's not like, you're not going to do yourself any favors, you're just going to feel worse.
Right.
Hmm.
And you've even, you've done it with me even where you've called me as your pastor and said, "Hey, I'm feeling this, like this is going on." And
Hmm.
we've talked through. And I think that if we don't have those people we can call,
That's
um,
right.
it's sometimes it's dangerous to live with our own thoughts because we don't know how we're processing it. And well, those are
Hmm.
powerful, absolutely powerful keys. One of the things, when I asked you to be on, I said, what's big on your heart? And you said freedom. You want to bring
Hmm.
freedom to people. What does that mean to you? And we're talking already about it, but what is that? And because I can hear it coming out of you, what does that
Hmm.
mean for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I didn't. It means so much to me because even in a life, like again, even with addiction or anything like that, you can be free from something physically, um, but not emotionally.
Hmm.
You could be like letting go of a substance or a relationship that's unhealthy, and inside you are still broken, shattered, and not free. And so to me, it's like we call it emotional sobriety. And when you're emotionally sober, it's like dealing with, okay, if you're an alcoholic, you get rid of the alcohol, you're a dry drunk. Nothing's changed. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You got rid of the substance, it's out of the way, but you're still dealing with all the behavioral and emotional issues that we were just talking about. So freedom for me is making, allowing not just something to come out of my life, but to replace it with the truth of who God says I am and what He wants in my life. So often I would try to, either I would see people or I would try to say, I'll be better when I get rid of this. I'll be happier when I don't do that. And you try to be free from this maybe bad habit or whatever, but there was this, it was actually keeping you in more bondage because it's in your own way of saying, I'll be different if I can get rid of that. But then what? You're empty. Everything inside is just emptiness inside at that point. And so, I mean, I was taking some freedom courses and stuff like that, and it really brought more light into it. And a lot of it, even I started even doing more with, when I got COVID, and when I said I would bring up COVID very nicely. When I got COVID in April, I had 2 weeks that I was in my room, stuck in my room, and with God. So it was an opportunity. I was downloading courses and different things, and just really learning more about freedom. And one of the things was that, I wanted to get, like, I want to have a better understanding about, people want freedom, but they don't understand that when you give up something, you're empty. And when you're empty, when you, like, say you get delivered from something, you're empty. And the thing you get delivered from, whether if it's a spiritual thing, it comes back around and it comes back way worse, looking for that place, right? And so
Yeah.
we need to fill it, and God wants to fill us. So freedom isn't about the absence of something, it's about being filled with something of God and of his
Mm,
purpose and identity and truth in you. And so when I heard that, it was just so much. That's exactly what we want. We want that emotional sobriety. We want that freedom that says, okay, you know what? I don't want to just keep getting rid of things, because those things were being there. Those things were used for a purpose in my life, whether they're wrong or right. They were fulfilling something in my life.
mm,
And I used it to whether avoid or, not whatever, like, look at life. But once you take that away, then what do I have? You know what I mean? And then
yeah,
that's often what people do. I just want to be delivered from this. I just want to be freed from this. But real freedom is that Christ paid for that at the cross, but he also wants to walk that out in your life. He wants to
it's
fill
good.
you with the Holy Spirit to give you power. And when you are filled with that power, then there's like things that you will have a better understanding of. You can It's not about like you just get like a transformation, like, oh, I'm all better. It's not a we call it not a process. It's not an event, but a process.
Yeah. Well, I think of, we often forget, the Israelites came out of Egypt and it took one day to leave Egypt, but it took 40 years for Egypt to get out of them.
That's right.
And, and then if you want to add in, the fact is that they actually built the ark and had the presence of God with them, and yet still had a lot of issues.
Hmm.
And we can forget about that with people, that it's a process. We're walking things out. And I love what you're saying, and I love it. And it's also, I don't want to say scary, but the reality is that we could substitute one really bad addiction for some not so bad addiction, but it's still the same thing. Like you're saying, you're just trying to fill a void.
Hmm.
You move from alcohol to binge eating,
Hmm.
or binge watching or something. We're not really getting healed. We've just substituted something else that's not as harmful, right?
That's right.
And so you're really talking about that process of getting healed, of really discovering what's behind,
To the root.
yeah, what's behind the veil, what's behind the root of it. So that's powerful, and
Hmm.
obviously it takes some time.
Yeah, it sure does. It's looking at truth is one of the most painful things. um
Your
in
your your
your
husband just said, "I knew she was good to preach. My wife is amazing."
Oh,
He's
okay,
cheering
brother.
you on from wherever he is.
Yeah, I'm trying not to preach.
No, you're doing this is fantastic. It's such good information, and
Mhm.
it's stuff that people have to really think of. And to be honest, that's why we started. Wanted to do R3 because so often we don't realize how complex we are. And
Mhm.
I would love it, and sometimes it does happen. People go to the altar, get saved, and like 80% of all their garbage gets healed. Sometimes 90. But the
Mhm.
reality is almost everybody has certainly something that they have to still walk out, mindsets that have to be changed, upbringing that distorted their perspective on God. And sometimes we forget that and we don't want to go to those roots. So,
That's right.
yeah.
I think like with Dorman, like, was a good example of that. Like, he got delivered at the church, right? At the front of the altar, and
Yeah.
his desire was gone to want to use drugs. And it was instantly that he could honestly say that he felt free. But his mom and dad made the decision to put him in a program to give him the tools and the ability to go deeper into things that were causing him to go there in the first place.
Right.
Right? Like, why did I go there? Why is that my way of, and for Dorman, I mean, if he shared his testimony, he would be able to tell you those things that, those are things that, that he shared, like, wanting to be the best truck driver out there, wanting to be this, wanting to, so there was some sort of image he was living up to, and it didn't matter what it cost to get there. And
Right.
so, those things drove him, and his desires were driving him. And so often that, our desires will lead us into things that are not so freeing. And one of the things I love quoting is Joyce Myers, and she said, you have the freedom to choose, but not everything you choose will bring you freedom.
I
I
was going to bring
love
that
that.
quote up because you shared that, and I thought
Yeah.
that's powerful. So say it again so we can hear it.
So you have the freedom to choose, but not everything you choose will bring you freedom. And I love that. And every now and then it pops up on my Facebook feed when I shared it like 10 years ago, and I just keep resharing it. And
So
because it's
unpack
so,
that a little because we could
yeah.
say it and move on. Like what that because there's a lot to that.
So, I mean, again, God gave us free will. Free will is part of who God made us to be. He made us spiritual, emotional, physical, mental, and He gave us this wonderful gift called free will. Started in the garden. Hey guys, you guys can eat from every tree, but you cannot eat from this one. This one will kill you. I'm telling you the truth. It's gonna kill you. You know what I mean? He tells them the truth, and he's not trying to take something away from them. And he gives them the freedom to choose from all the wonderful things in the garden, and shows them the blessings and everything that they could experience, but they still chose something that took away their freedom and not gave them more freedom. Even
Mm,
though he gave them the free will to choose, it was something that they felt that there was a questionable doubt. Is God really, does he mean what he says? And I mean, we all go through it. And I used to, when I was a kid, I used to blame Adam and Eve and say it's because of them,
right.
but I probably would have made the same decision. And so everything I choose will not bring me freedom. So I can, okay, so I need to eat. And I mean, that's part of my physical body. I need to eat. That's like, if I don't eat, I will starve and I will malnourish and I will die, to the extreme of it, right? But if I choose things to put in my body that's not healthy for me, that's not going to bring me freedom. And I know because
Good.
I was there. I had a dependency on food, addiction in that way, that felt like if I was dealing with emotional things that I didn't like, was overwhelming or anything like that, was not hard for me. And I have a thing with my group downtown that I tell them, nobody bring chips. That is my no. Do not, that's my kryptonite. Don't bring chips.
It's not
And
cheesecake. I thought it was
oh,
cheesecake.
yeah, no, that's Dorman. I'll
Okay.
eat the cheesecake, but it's not like, it's not my weakness. And so I love chips. We grew up eating chips as a celebration. It was something that me and my sisters would do just to have fun on the weekends when they come home from university. It was it was just there. And so I used it as an emotional crutch and in my life for everything. Like it literally would be food, but chips was the main thing I would use. So
I don't know if she's frozen on everybody's end or just my end. Oh, we just lost her. So hopefully we can get her back there. The information she's giving is phenomenal. Just incredible. If you are hearing me, Erica, just log back in and we'll get you back on. But yeah, the information she's giving is really, really key. So I want her to get back on and we'll try to do that. Here we go. There she is. Awesome.
I don't know how that happened, but it
It
just took
happens.
me off.
Technology.
Right. So,
So chips were
as
your
a,
kryptonite.
yeah,
And
that's
so I
right.
love what you're saying though, because you could have the freedom to eat it, but it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily bring you freedom.
That's right. And I'm not condemning anybody who likes chips. I'm saying everything in
No,
moderation, right? And
but
that's just it.
and isn't that the thing for each of us? We try to this is law at its finest, right? So we want to make a rule for everything because we want to protect everyone. That's the law. And yet Christ wants us to have freedom. And so for one person, chips does nothing for them. But for
Hmm.
somebody else, chips is their kryptonite. And so we have to be responsible to go, Lord, what are you asking of me?
Hmm.
Because I know somebody that can eat 1,000 bags of chips and not be unhealthy, it seems, or I'm sure that there is, but they don't seem to
Hmm.
gain weight. But for somebody else, you and I have a similar gut issue sometimes. We have to be very careful what we digest or don't digest. And so it's not the Lord going, we have to have a law against all chips.
Hmm.
It's, well, do you want to be healthy? Do you want to make that choice to be healthy? And what does that look like for you, Jay? What does that look like for you, Erica? So,
Right. And I think like one of the biggest things were like is that I have the power to choose. I have freedom to choose. And so
mm,
a lot of times like when I first met Leslie, and I I was a mess. Like, I mean, I if I wouldn't have like I mean I've had other counseling and it was a really good beginning start to my road of recovery. But one thing about Leslie, she's a straight shooter. She'll say it like it is, kind of thing. And so I love that about her because I needed someone who was going to be truthful in my life. And one of the things I kept doing was I kept saying, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to choose, I have to do this for my kids, I have to, you know, anything like I was trying to do, everything I was motivated to do was like I have to. And she said, no, you don't. And I'm like,
mm,
yes, I do. I said, if I don't, then I'm not gonna, my kids are gonna starve, or this is, or whatever. I would make up whatever excuse I could think of. And she said, but is it a choice? And I said, well, no, I have to. And it would just take forever to understand that I had to actually say that I needed to know I was empowered to choose. That what God gave me was the freedom to choose, and that even in my hard choices, that He wanted me to know that when I chose something that was going to bring me life. It wasn't about empowering me as like, like, oh, I'm better, or like I'm prideful, but it was saying, He said, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. He wants us to choose. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I would choose these things, but I would think that I had to do it, and that takes away from what He gave. So He gave me that right to choose. And so when I started realizing that, wow, I can choose, yeah, I'm choosing that. I'm choosing to get healthy. I'm choosing to go to bed early and get some sleep, which is still difficult for me sometimes, but I'm choosing to be kind. I don't have to be kind just because I'm a Christian. I don't have to be that. God still wants me to know that I am empowered by my choices, that I can do those things. And when I don't think I can do them, I need to know that maybe there's a weakness in there, and that God wants to come in and bring strength in that area so I can make those choices. So sometimes I might feel like I don't know how to do that. How do I make that choice? How can I make that decision? And you feel like you're trapped, but then His strength is made perfect in that
Mm.
weakness. So He wants to know that, yeah, I still have a choice to allow Him to come into my life to strengthen me in that area.
So what did that do for you when you began to realize that?
Hmm. I started really thinking about my choices. I started thinking about what was bringing me life, what was stealing from me, what was robbing from me. I started thinking about, wow, how many times did I lay down my free will? How many times did I not really value that wonderful gift? How many times was I stealing other people's free will? Trying to rob them of their choices. I couldn't control the outcome of things. All I could do was do my life. I can't control my kid's life, but I can encourage them. I can, speak life into people's lives. But it gave me such a I don't know, just like my thoughts became clearer to understand that, when I make these choices, what am I doing it for? Am I doing it out of guilt? Am I doing it out of shame? Am I making these choices again because of, am I people pleasing? I want to know that I'm making these choices because He's directing my path that way. So I ask myself those questions, and sometimes I still make the wrong choices, and that's okay too, because I need to know that there's forgiveness there too. And like, I'm not saying it gives me permission to do what I want or to mess up or anything like that, but one of the things like we teach in recovery is that sometimes relapse is a part of your recovery. We don't encourage the relapse, we prepare them for the relapse, because sometimes they make the wrong choice,
Mm.
but you learn from your mistakes. And so when we make those wrong choices, but am if I keep making the wrong choice, and I got to ask myself, why am I going there? So it helps me to go to the root faster. When I start realizing some of my choices that I'm making, or that um I have that freedom to choose, I want to know, why am I choosing that? Like, why was I choosing the bag of chips? And I seen that I had formed an unhealthy relationship, a tie actually, with that thing, because
Hmm.
it brought me back to that childhood where I felt safe. I felt like I had fun. It was my, like, literally, that was our celebration. If you still go to a birthday party, well, we haven't had to. So that was, but I said, when that day comes, I'm like, I'm going to bring some nuts. That's my backup plan, right? Because nuts are chewy, I mean, crunchy. And so those are I have other choices.
That's
So,
really good.
hmm
So we just have a few minutes left, and it's so good, Erica. Thank you for bringing what you're bringing. So what would you tell somebody if they're listening right now and they're going, "Oh my gosh, this is me." Like, where do you start? Obviously, we may all have to sometimes, and I can't believe how many people over this last season's pastors and leaders are like, "Yep, I thought I saw a therapist." We've all needed to reach out,
yeah.
and not necessarily everybody needs that, but what if they're like, there's a tinge of truth that everybody's feeling right now? Where do you start with this to get healed?
Again, one of the things I learned in the freedom course was you can't hide and heal at the same time. If you
And
need to
hide
talk,
and heal.
yeah,
Wow.
your secrets will, like, you will always have shame with your secrets, or there's usually that tendency that happens there, and you need to expose some of that sometimes. And so finding that person that you can share and talk to about some of the things, like, again, COVID, during this time, like when things shut down, it was hard. A lot of people had to deal with isolation. And when you are isolated, I found things coming up in my life, that old tendencies to want to run to, and I was like, this isn't me. Like, this is old coping mechanisms. And so I would just encourage people that to be real with, what they're struggling with. If there is a struggle, if their mindsets are, they're finding that, they're going back to old mindsets, or they're struggling with new mindsets or whatever. Um, knowing that, again, like, when you hide, it's that shame that makes you hide. It's back to the garden, hide the secrets, and don't confront. um and just understand that, it says that the Lord, I want to say it right, the Lord is spirit, and where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And he
Hmm.
and I hold on to that, because it's like, again, if I'm just looking at getting rid of something, it's going to come back. Something else will come back. But where the spirit of the Lord is, where he resides, where he lives in, he wants to fill up all those empty places. He wants to take it. And my father-in-law said one day, Dorman's dad, that he said he had this vision of a motel, and it said no vacancy. And he said that's what they need to see. That's what those old things need to see when they come by, that there's no vacancy. It's filled. There's
Hmm.
no room here. And I love that, because we want we want to be filled with the things that God planned for us, and that he desires for us. And where his spirit is, there's freedom. Freedom and God go together, you know what I mean? And yeah, there's hard choices in some of those things that he may ask you to give up, or he may ask you to share, or whatever. But like Brandy said, I can do hard things, right?
Yeah,
I love that quote, and I share that with people that I work with. I said that will stay with me forever. So,
that's awesome.
hmm
Yeah, I think sometimes we can oversimplify things and think, like, you're really talking about a process at times. You're talking
hmm
about sitting down, taking stock of going, why am I running to this?
hmm
Going back to the fact that if we're not filled with the Holy Spirit, reading the Word, all these things play in. That's the R3. That's the body, soul, spirit. That's holistic
hmm
health. We because sometimes you could read the Bible till you're blue in the face, and still not get to a root of something. You could
hmm
actually be avoiding just simply by wanting to read the Word and thinking you're super spiritual. There's so many ways that we as people find a way to avoid what we really need to get to the root of.
hmm
So it's powerful stuff. I think we could do a whole nother session because there's stuff that we probably didn't even touch on. I love your quote. You have the freedom to choose, but not everything you choose will bring you freedom.
hmm
That was powerful. You just said a second ago, what was the hiding quote? I really like that one.
I wrote that one down. Hold on. I just so I can remember again. Um, you can't hide and heal at the same time.
Can't hide and heal at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a quote that you need to sit down and really just digest.
Hmm.
There's a lot of freedom in that, and maybe a little scary too for people.
Yeah, you're going to have to sometimes ask yourself hard questions. And, but when you ask those things to God, always remember, God is relational and he isn't like wanting to reject us. And you may feel like he is, again, your feelings, but your feelings are not always the truth. So you are free, but you may not feel like you're free, but Christ set you free,
Yeah,
and he's walking out your freedom. And so again, don't go by your feelings. Your
yeah.
feelings are not going to always lead you down that path of freedom, right?
One of the things I always take comfort in, it's amazing, Paul will start off writing to the saints at Ephesus, to the saints at Corinth. And it's funny because then he goes on to tell them how messed up they are, all the things that
Hmm.
they're doing wrong. But he always starts off with, hey, saints. And I think sometimes we can get the part that we understand we're forgiven. We understand that part of the cross, but we
Hmm.
forget that we're righteous as well. Not because of everything we do, but because of what he did. But it's applying that to our life that's the challenge, right? So,
That's right.
any final
That's
thoughts as we get ready to close here?
um I mean, really, I just want, everybody to know, like, again, like, whatever that is, that maybe you're know somebody that's struggling with being free, or you're struggling with being free, that Jesus loves you. He loved you before the struggle, he loved you during the struggle, he loves you when, he just loves you, and there's not this waiting to change for him to love you.
Mm,
And to just really grasp that. And I have to remind myself of that all the time, because sometimes, again, when you fail or you feel like you failed or whatever, that there's that distance that wants to come in and say that you're not good enough, and that maybe God doesn't love you, but he loves you, and he wants us to always know that it never changes. It doesn't change because of our faults and our failures. It's who he is. And so, again, that freedom that he died for is yours. And if there are some things that you need to get healing for, and to go through the process, then reach out and get help. And constantly, counselors need counselors, pastors need counselors. We all need to unpack things in our life, and we all need to be able to look at those things that we unpacked and decide what we need to keep and what we don't need to keep.
that's awesome. Well, Erica, what you brought has been gold. Honestly, it's been fantastic. And the two of you, I think people need to hear your voice a little more often too. It's easy to hide behind Dorman, right? But what you carry is phenomenal, and you've brought a lot of wisdom and help, I think, for people. Maybe we'll do this again. I think we need to carry this conversation on again. I'd really appreciate that if you have time. But thank you for taking the time to come on tonight.
Thank you for
So
asking me.
thankfully you have air conditioning tonight.
Yes.
So, I really do appreciate it, and you have brought a lot for people to think about. And so, well done, and thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank you.
All right, you have a great night. Thanks again for everybody for joining us. Next week will be Prayer Essentials, and then we'll let you know what's going to happen after that. Why don't you just stay on for 1 second, Erica? I'm just going to close this out. We say thank you to everyone. God bless.